let's talk about visuals and when and how to use them in technical documents. There are 3 key reasons to use visuals in a technical document. The first is to make the document more concise. If there is lengthy information that would take a dense chunk of text to explain, but you can get that information across more quickly and easily using a visual, that is a good reason to use a visual in a technical document. Visuals can also help clarify complicated information that might take a lot of mental understanding to try to wade through in a large amount of text. And of course, visuals can be used to add aesthetic appeal to a document. A well-placed, well-used visual can help create a very clean, professional-looking document. The key, though, is that you need to remember that visuals need to help the reader understand the information. Just dropping a visual into the text because it looks pretty and you think it's going to make the document look better is not reason enough to use a visual. We do want visuals in our documents, and they do add aesthetic, professional appeal, but they should also be adding something else. They should be helping the reader understand. Visuals should be integrated within the text so that the text is referring to the visual and the visual is explaining the text. They're not just going to appear seemingly randomly with no information about what this visual is or why this visual is being included. They also need to be located close to the section of text that refers to them. And the best situation is if you can locate the visual immediately after the text that discusses it. They also need to add something or further explain something that is already being addressed in the text. They're going to get some bit of information across that could not be as effectively gotten across through text alone, so that there is a relationship between the text and the visual. Perhaps you're explaining something in the text and then you're explaining it a second time in a visual way. Perhaps you're discussing something in the text and then you're adding additional information through a visual. But there is some relationship between what you have chosen to include in text form and what you have chosen to include in visual form, and the visual is including information that needs to appear in visual form. It's important also that you don't throw a bunch of extra information at the reader that the reader does not need. So the visual should include information that the reader needs to fully understand what you're talking about, but not add additional information that is just going to confuse or bog down the reader. Of course, they need to be an appropriate size and they need to be printed clearly so that the reader can easily read and understand the visual. And they should be labeled. The standard form for labeling a visual is going to be to have a title, a colon, and a subtitle. For example, figure 1, colon, and then a subtitle that is more descriptive and gives a clear idea of what that visual gets across. And then visuals need to be consistent with each other. So if you have chosen a certain style for your tables, all the tables in your technical document need to adhere to that same style. It should feel as though these visuals were all created and designed in the same way so that it creates a consistent feel and flow throughout the document. What I'd like you to keep in mind is that there are 4 I's of visuals. Visuals need to be introduced, identified, inserted, and interpreted. So by introduce, I mean that you're going to lead into the visual in the text. There will be somewhere in the text where it says, see figure 1 for X information. The visual needs to be identified with a label. And again, that label generally is going to include a title, a colon, and a descriptive subtitle. The visual should be inserted close to the text that refers to it, ideally immediately after the text. And the visual needs to be interpreted in the text. So you're not just going to drop the visual in and expect the reader to decode it. You're going to help the reader understand what this visual has to do with what you are talking about in this document.